Pledge of Allegiance, which will be done by Brian Barrett.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now have an opening prayer by Justin Wright.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to gather together this evening as neighbors to discuss the future of our city. We're grateful for the participation that's here tonight, and we'd ask that would help us all to remember that we are all neighbors and that we live in the city of good neighbors. We'd ask that we can have an open discussion and that we can listen to concerns and support that those tonight will share. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
All right, Haley will do our roll call.
Commissioner Brian Barrett.
Here.
Clark Moss.
Here.
Commissioner Heidi Murdoch.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Wright.
Yes.
Chairman Kevin Polson.
Here.
Councilmember Gary Anderson.
Here. All right, we'll proceed to public comments. Now, be clear, we have two public hearings today. This opening public commentary is about anything but those two issues. Those two issues will come up. So I know a lot of people want to talk about the ordinance, a lot of people want to talk about the zoning. This time is for other matters. So if anyone has anything to share with that regard, we ask you to come up to the mic and take no more than 3 minutes. And then just to speak as to the later public hearings, we have a lot of people here tonight. We have a lot of strong opinions, as I understand it. We are the city of good neighbors, and that starts here. So we invite you in your commentary to be respectful, to understand we're all trying to do our best here. And please don't disparage anybody from the city council or our staff here. You can disparage me for oddities about myself. I'm okay with that. The mayor, etc. Especially, I have seen in emails accusations made against people that not only don't have supportive evidence for them, but could constitute libel or slander in certain settings. So let's be just very careful and conscientious of how we treat each other. And also with those public hearings that we're having, we will be limiting comments to 2 to 3 minutes. And if someone has already raised a thought that you share, because you don't want to be here until tomorrow, we want to make sure not to be repetitive. We know the concerns. We know that there's a lot of shared concerns. So with that said, we'll move forward to the public comments not relating to the public hearings. Are there anyone who would like to raise anything? I imagined as much. Okay. So let's go ahead. We'll move forward to section 3 about presentations or accommodations as appropriate. Is there any of that today, Jeff or Darren? Nothing? Okay. So let's move on. We'll go ahead and review and approve Planning Commission meeting minutes from January 30th, 2024 and February 5th, 2024.
Can I just make some comments to put them down so we can go through them quick?
Makes sense to me.
Okay, under presentation in the third line down, we really like you, Kevin, but your name is in there in parentheses, and I don't think it has anything.
So that makes sense to get up.
So if we could strike that.
Is that January?
Oh, I am in January 30th. On the paragraph down the way, so it's actually on the second page that starts City Planner Jeff Euler. There's 2 sentences there. It says, and planning commissions, period, cannot be involved in any final approvals. I think that needs to be 1 sentence. And the same problem down in the third line up from the bottom always have to check, period, and make sure, I don't think we need a period that should be one sentence. The just up from the bottom, it should have said final plat, and it says final plot. We're not plotting against anyone here. And in the next paragraph down, are you with me, Haley?
Yeah.
Once again, we have those special studies, period. Third line up from the bottom of that paragraph should be one sentence. The next line down, there are two ands together. And that's all I can say.
Okay, any other comments on January 30 minutes? All right,
Are you okay with my suggestions?
yeah, no, those work for me. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes with those changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the January 30th, planning commission for, parks.
Do I have a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll go ahead to the February 5th meeting minutes. 1 second, I'm gonna pull them up myself.
I did not see any problems with February 5th. It was pretty short.
Those are my favorite meeting minutes, is when it's been a quick meeting. Yeah, I don't see any issue there either.
I'll make a motion to approve February 5th minutes.
I have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Okay, we're now ready to move forward to planning commission business. We have, again, 2 public hearings. What we'll start with today is our public hearing discussion to update Title 10 regarding chickens and rabbits in single-family residential zones. And the public hearing is now open again. We repeat that we're trying to limit our time so that there's enough time for people who want to make comments to come and do so. Please don't repeat comments. And if you'd like to come share a comment, please proceed to the microphone. Yes,
You can make a motion
to open it.
I'll
Okay.
motion that we move into a public hearing for the rabbits, chickens and rabbits ordinance.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Okay, can I just talk about this real quick?
Sure, please.
And then they'll let people, maybe I will answer a few questions.
Perfect.
So, the reason the chicken ordinance thing is coming up, we've had some issues with calls about chickens, and others call saying, can we have chickens? Fruithead City only has a certain area in the ordinance where it's RS12 or agricultural where chickens are allowed. And we have individuals that have them in different zones. So we've kind of went through and looked at different cities to see what they have. And we put this together. Now, this isn't 100% because I know there's concerns. I've had concerns about lot sizes. You know, we don't want it on an 8,000 square foot lot, but it could be bigger. I know there's concerns about the selling of eggs. Is one of the concerns that's been out there, and different issues like that. The number of chickens, how many chickens you can have, and those kind of things. Those are all things that need to possibly still be put into this ordinance. One of the ones I got called in today was so I can be thrown in jail for 6 months because it could be a Class B misdemeanor. I don't think that is going to happen. I think there are laws and there need to be consequences to laws, and as it progresses, you know, yes, the consequences could get worse, and I think that's something that needs to be looked at. I don't know how many people had the opportunity to actually read the ordinance and how it's been online. We try to get out as much as we could so people could have the opportunity to read it. There's been a lot of comments, and I'll tell you right now, my comments have been about 50-50.
50% of the comments I have, yeah, we want the chickens. And about the same amount saying we don't want the chickens. So luckily it's not my decision to move this on. It comes to the planning commission. They're able to add, if square lots, there has to be 15,000, square feet lots or those kind of things. That all can be added to this before it goes to the council, or it can be changed a little bit. But that's the basis of the chicken ordinance. And I'll tell you, South Ogden is in the newspaper tonight because they're going through the same issue, and Washington Terrace. So Fruit Heights is not the only one on this one. So.
All righty, go ahead, and I will be stop watching you. I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to mind everyone's time. So please proceed.
Okay, I'm Tom Householder. I just wanted to share some of our experience. We bought our home 21 years ago. It had chickens on it for 30 years prior to us buying it, and we continued that tradition. We are RS12, and we're almost three quarters of an acre, but we do have 24 chickens in compliance with the current code. During the last 21 years, our 5 children have had the opportunity to learn responsibility, learn to take care of those animals, learn to keep the neighbors happy, as well as learn some important entrepreneurial skills. And it's been a great thing for our family and for our children, and for a lot of you here who have actually bought eggs from our children. It's not clear if this would affect RS12, but I think it would be a huge mistake to take these wonderful experiences that my kids have had and turn them into a misdemeanor.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corinne Dixon. So I read the proposed language, and I just wanted to make some comments about a couple things in there that I have concerns about. I was kind of shocked when I read it, frankly. The most shocking part that I think is in there, as I keep thinking about it, is the Class B misdemeanor, like they were talking about. So I did a little Googling, and like it was said previously, you can land in jail for 6 months. You can have a $1,000 fine if you violate any of these things that are on the list, like not burying your wire deep enough, or maybe selling an egg to your neighbor. And in Utah, crimes that usually fall under the Class B misdemeanor category are assault, criminal trespass, petty theft, cyber harassment. So, I just don't think the crime fits the punishment here. And I just have concerns about that. I also want to ask the question, how are you going to enforce all this? How are you going to know that the wire is buried deep enough? How are you going to know that, it has 1/4 inch or less holes? Are you going to have to hire someone to check all this? How are you going to know if someone's not following the rules? Those are my questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kent Jones. This is my good wife, Donna. We've lived in Fruit Heights for 44 years. And we're here tonight because we have chickens. We've been raising them for the last 15 years. And I'm speaking on behalf of Donna's friends because she's named all the chickens, and we're defending them tonight. Anyway, I have a picture of our operation. I'll just pass that by the Planning Commission. It seems like we're pretty good on the ordinance as far as what's needed, except for a couple of things. Number one, we're not 10 feet off of a property line. In fact, on F1, it says 5, and then parentheses 10. Is it 5 or 10? There must be a typo there. The other thing is we're with our weather vane and a few things, it's beyond 8 feet. So what we would appreciate if the Planning Commission could put a provision there for either grandfathering or exceptions where we make an application to the city for the small deviations that we have. we've had a very successful situation. All of our families get eggs. We never sell them. There's 4 or 5 families in our neighborhood that are elderly. We provide eggs to them. The coop's cleaned every single day. It's insulated. We got power. So it's a pretty nice operation. It has a nice big free range. They're always locked in at night. We have a rodent control people that come every 3 months just to make sure there's no rodent problems in the area. So we'd appreciate the provision there some way for those of us that have a pre-existing situation, that there can be a grandfathering in or some exception. So that would be our request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have been kind of in the urban homesteading community for a really long time, and once, sorry, Victoria Stone.
Thank you.
For the past 4 years, ever since COVID and shortages of food and everything else, that community has exploded. And a lot of people are more concerned about being able to access food and be able to be more self-sufficient. And part of that comes with supporting your community and your local producers, farmers, growers, which is kind of what Fruit Heights was all about, right? Our orchards, we have the Fruitway. You know, I live on just under 1/3 of an acre, and I can't raise a cow, but I can buy raw milk from Milk Barn Creamery in Morgan. And I don't raise bees, but I can buy honey from Eden Foods. I buy eggs from the householders. I buy meat from Utah Natural Meat and Milk based in South Jordan. And, you know, at this season for me, I'm still not quite ready for chicken ownership, but I think that, you know, I will in the future. And I would love to be able, for myself and for everybody that desires that, to have access and have the opportunity to do that so they can learn the skills, like the householder said, and just be self-sufficient. We want to be able to raise our own food and grow our own food, and that's part of our food storage, our emergency preparedness, and I think we should be encouraging that instead of discouraging it by making the rules so complex we can't meet them, because some of our lot sizes are really oddly shaped. And we should be encouraging people to be able to provide for themselves and their families healthy, locally grown food. So, thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Caroline Enkelberger. I was reading this proposed ordinance to my husband, and as he got down the list, he was like, wait a second, this is Fruit Heights? So it sounds like an HOA or California wrote this. We've lived in both, and we don't want to go back to either. I wholeheartedly support expanding, codifying the right to grow people to grow their own food in their yard with the least restriction possible. I hate the thought of us looking into our neighbor's backyard at that level of minutia and nitpicking what they're doing in their backyard. And even the thought of not using scrap materials. I thought, am I gonna go nitpick my neighbors now for having cars on blocks on their driveway or anything that I find maybe not, what I would want in my own yard? No. So I would just say, in the city of good neighbors, I don't think this is a neighborly proposal, but I do support definitely expanding the right to own chickens in people's backyards, even though I don't want chickens.
Well said. My name is Chris Christensen. My issue is very similar. And I'm not sure I understand the whole issue, but in my mind, there's 2 primary issues with chickens. Keeping them in your own yard, and maybe you don't like a crowing chicken early in the morning noise. I don't know why we would take and put to try to codify what we're making reference to here, everything else that was in there, the size of the coop, how deep your wire should be, what kind of ventilation. Really, is that government's problem? I just don't think it's got anything to do with the city, state, or the net, nothing. If we need anything, maybe it's keep your chickens in your own yard. My neighbors moved in not long ago, and they had chickens and talked to me about it and said, let them run, I don't care. And I just didn't realize what a mess they could be. So to start with, they just kept them in their yard, little by little, they encroached on mine. And I did what I think most good neighbors do. At some point in time, I had poop all over inside the cement floor in my barn and across my porch, my walk-around porch at my house. Finally, my wife and I said, I don't want to, we love our neighbors. But finally, we chatted with them and they said, and they came up and they didn't realize it was right there on my front doorstep. And I think it took them 48 hours to fix that problem. We continue to be great neighbors. They bring us eggs and we swap things all the time. I get my eggs mostly from our neighbors. I either buy them or they show up on my porch. I don't know who gave them to me. But my request here is I really think that the city ought to relook at this whole thing and drop about 90% of the whole ordinance. I'm not sure we're addressing problems that aren't problems. And I think there are plenty of other things to do, and I think the comments that have already been made here have been significant in terms of trying to find some way to accommodate. I think if we really wanted to do this in this city of good neighbors, we ought to just back off. And if we need to even say this, keep your chicken in your yard, and about everything else goes away, and the rest of it is not the government's business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Burton, I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts. This first gentleman, when he came up, I just really resonated with that because his boys have learned hard work and entrepreneurship with these eggs, and that's why I moved here. Like, honestly, we bought this lot. There's not a lot of big acreage, and it's RS12, and we bought it so our boys would learn hard work. And I have a 5, a 6, a 7-year-old, no, 4, 6, and 7. They're not that close, but they're close enough. And we just want to grow them up on them. Right now, you should see them. They run out and they deliver these eggs. They get $1 per every delivery. And as time goes on, I want them to take over the feeding, and they can gather the eggs yet, but they're still a little bit far away. And these provisions, I follow all of it. I'm 36 inches out on 1/8 inch wire, so I mean, not to brag, but it's kind of a cool haul. My chickens roam around, they're happy, everything like that. But we are really respectful of our neighbors. I guess the thing I wanted to say is just, he said 50-50 on the chickens, pros and cons. I've only heard pros here, and not to say that cons can't speak, but that's all I've heard. And I just wanted to read the RS12 purpose as I read this. The residential suburban zone is established to provide medium density residential neighborhoods, which retain some rural characteristics. This character is retained by allowing agricultural activity, including the keeping of farm animals, where conditions are favorable. And a lot of this place is RS12 and conditions are favorable, and this is in violation with this. So either we're rewording all of what RS12 is, or I don't know what the next step is. And I didn't know you guys couldn't answer questions. So I was going to pose some questions. Those are just, I guess, to the ether. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Hale. I want to first start out by thanking you for your service to our city and for the opportunity to come and comment, for allowing that to be a public process. And also I wanted to thank whoever put together all these details. I know that's difficult. However, I do resonate with all that has been said. I've checked off all the things I wanted to say according to what they said. So I just want to reiterate that. But I do want to, as an experienced chicken owner, we have had hobby homesteads in 2 different cities in Utah. We don't here currently, but based on experience, I want to just relay a few things that really should be changed. So with the modern chicken management, there's a thing called chicken tractors. And they help a lot in managing, like they keep the birds contained while allowing them to roam safely throughout the yard. And it helps to cut down on bugs and just manage your home, your yard better, and that would not allow you to have buried wire. It's just not possible. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is that the size of the enclosure, when you say square feet, it actually should be cubic feet per bird. And it actually needs to be, you need to understand that different bird sizes and different cavity sizes will need different sizes of enclosures. And I really think it would be a lot simpler just to not worry about it. Because any good manager of animals will know how to take care of their animals. So, let's see, and then there's already a noise ordinance. So I'm not sure that the thing about roosters really applies, really needs to be said. And then finally, I may not be a very popular person when I say that I don't like H3, the slaughtering of residential chickens and rabbits on premises, because anyone who has owned birds for more than 3 years knows that there's a life cycle that really needs to be managed well. And so if we don't have a place to carry that out in a respectful way, then I'm not sure where we would go to do that. I think on our premises is the best way. It can be messy, and it's important to have a water source and shade, and like there are lots of things that go into respectfully slaughtering an animal. And so if we're allowed to care for those animals, we need to be able to also manage the end of their life. So.
Hello, my name is Alan Wolston. I haven't really been hearing 50-50 either. I'm hearing a lot of 100-0, and I'm going to add to that. Utah state motto, industry. I, like probably many of us here, come from a long line of Utahns. My ancestors, through many lines, were pioneers. Settled this land when it was all desert, it was uninhabitable. And through industry, through hard work, and yes, a lot of growing our own food, managing our own animals, my ancestors, all of our ancestors, have built this wonderful state and this wonderful city. Let's not forget what they did for us. It's not just a hobby, it's not just a pastime, it's who we are. It's in our DNA. We are self-reliant, we take care of ourselves, and we do not bow down to an ordinance that is really a solution in desperate search of a problem. Thank you.
My name is Dale Kunkel, and I do not have chickens. However, I do like the ordinance, how it has been written up, or maybe the intent of the ordinance. It seems like it was meant to allow additional people who perhaps their properties do not meet the RS-12 the ability to keep chickens. I would like to see within the ordinance language adopted that's similar to the Utah Code that speaks to small producers and designates small producers. I think it's something like 3,000 eggs or less in a month. But there's specific language that is Utah Code saying these people need to, if they're going to sell eggs, that the eggs need to be properly identified, some labeling. It can even be handwritten labeling. And so I think that should be adopted in the code. And I think you should allow, in the sense of the community that we are with Fruit Heights, for those eggs to be sold, should the producers choose to do that. I think it is really difficult to say we can sell peaches, we can sell fruit that is actually brought from outside of our city and sell those in those places, but not allow small producers to sell eggs. Now, as far as the pens go, or the coops go, and buried wire and all that stuff, I don't necessarily have an opinion, but our family did
just this week lose a pet to what was clearly a predator in the area. And so as a citizen, I do have concerns, as already mentioned, about chickens staying on the property and not creating a situation that draws more predators in. Half of our community is on a hillside that is adjacent to US forest land. And we run a risk of, if we are not self-governing and self-control of these animals, of drawing more potential predators and having things happen that nobody wants. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, are there, no, perfect, please.
I didn't intend to stand, but I'm going to. We moved here because we are from a rural community, and when we moved here.
Real quick, sorry, what was your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Donna Jones.
Thank you, Donna.
When we moved here, Fruit Heights was a rural community, and that is the reason we moved here. In our backyard, when we moved here, there were horses, chickens, and pigs. Pigs were not my favorite, but you know what? We dealt with it. We loved those neighbors, and they loved us. And as has been mentioned, I think we are the city of good neighbors, and we just need to remember that maybe we have different opinions and different ideas, but we can get along. And I just appreciate what everybody has shown. Mostly agree with everything that's been said. And we appreciate you guys. I've been on the city council, so I get what you're putting in. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Todd Haggard, and I just wanted to get on record and kind of a response that there's a Utah state code that was passed 5/3 of last year, animal enterprise and working animal regulations. And it says a political subdivision may not adopt or enforce an ordinance or other regulation that prohibits or effectively prohibits the operation of an animal enterprise. So I just don't know how your ordinance applies to that state ordinance. Thank you.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Cody Beckett. I moved to Fruit Heights about 2.5 years ago. I married my wife who's from Fruit Heights. Her mother's from Fruit Heights. I understand the history and tradition of farming here. It's called Fruit Heights for a reason. I came from Orange County, California, which is named after the fruit, the oranges, because it was filled with orange groves at one time. And today there are almost no orange groves. There's a few strawberry fields. California is micromanaged by the government. It's unbelievable. We feel like we escaped California. And when I read this, I thought, wow, I'm going back to California and I want to be in Utah. We picked Fruit Heights because it has that country feel, and you're close to Salt Lake, but you have this little place that's a little haven on earth. Most of this is not needed. We don't need to be told to provide food and water for our pets or animals, and it literally says that in there. Chicken owners are responsible. They're good neighbors. Most of these things should not be told to us by the government. I think thank you. I think most people in Fruit, I don't know what size lot should have chickens, but I think most people should have access to raising animals. I think you should be able to slaughter chickens on your property, even for the meat. There's a real connection with the earth and with God, and a respect for life and food when you do that. It seems like cities that are further and further away from food sources are more and more crazy. People are really grounded in reality when they see the reality of life in front of them. I plan to teach my daughters that. They're sitting right here in the front row. They're 4 and 2. I want to teach them commerce, We subsidize our chickens by selling the eggs. It's not, you're not winning by raising chickens and eating eggs. You're not saving money.
Yeah.
There was a few months during COVID where it was about even, if you're a good farmer. But anyways, I say eliminate pretty much the entire thing. All who can agree, please say aye.
So one thing that I didn't appreciate when,
Sorry, what was your
oh, I'm sorry, my name's Seth Nye.
Seth Nye, thank you.
Yes. So one thing I didn't appreciate when I first started reading through these proposed changes, that I think I kind of understood from your comments, and I'm sorry I don't know your name, but the first gentleman who stood up, is that it kind of sounds like we're actually trying to expand the ability to raise chickens in Fruit Heights in some sense, because there are several residential areas that don't allow it currently. And I mean, I am a brand new chicken owner. We actually just bought some chickens like a week or two ago. And then I saw this proposed ordinance, it's like, wait a second, we're gonna have to get rid of a bunch of chickens. Because we live in an RS12 and we live in that area where chickens have been allowed, but I do understand that there have been some areas where chickens have not been allowed. And so this would expand the ability to raise chickens to other areas. And I really support that. But yeah, I echo everybody else who says that, you know, all of the other restrictions are way too prescriptive, and yeah, we just don't need all of that extra in there. And so, yeah, let's expand it and just make sure that we stay responsible and stay good neighbors.
Garden Butcher. I wasn't gonna come tonight. My wife dragged me over here and said I need to be here, so here I am. I have a little comment about chickens. When I was 8 years old, I remember going down to our chicken coops. My grandfather had chickens. They were raised in Fruit Heights. We had 7 barns full of chickens. We produced 3,000 eggs a day. I hated gathering eggs. When I get to the chicken coop, we had boxes of chickens, and they would get up in these little boxes, and well, my uncle would come along, he'd stick his hand under there and pull the eggs out. I stick my hand up there, and these chickens were about that big. Their beaks were that long. And I knew I was gonna lose a hand, so I would bang on the box on the side. All the chickens would fly out, and I would gather the eggs. Do I know chickens? We had lots of chickens. My grandfather did one thing for me in a statement that he had one day when a neighbor's horse got out of the pen, out of his pasture, and trampled down my grandfather's cornfield. My grandfather got his pliers and his wire and went out, fixed the fence. About the time he finished fixing the fence up, the neighbor came out. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. My grandfather looked at him, and in response to what Brother Christensen says, the one thing we need here is really very, very simple. My grandfather says, strong fences make good neighbors. If all we do is put an ordinance that makes a strong fence, we can live together with the problems that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Stetson Womack. I just wanted to say one thing. Sorry, I do not like getting in front of people. But I just have a problem with this where it says any chicken and or rabbits kept as provided by this section shall not be deemed a household pet. I have a problem with that. We have bunnies. We don't want to eat them, but we also want to keep them as a pet. So I just have a problem with that line. Thanks.
My name is Rochelle Burton. 2 years ago, we moved here from Kaysville, and we came for the sole purpose of raising animals and raising our own food. We bought an 1.5 acres, and that's been our purpose. We wanted to teach our kids to do all that. And I kind of feel like this is a major government overreach, and you're coming in and you're taking away the rights that we have. And we planned all this. Like, who's going to pay for it when we can't have our coop anymore? How do we recoup that money? That was a lot of money that we invested a year ago. We've had our chickens for 1 year. We invested all this money. We are losing money daily on these chickens and these eggs, but that's not the point. We are trying to teach our little boys hard work and how to do it, how to collect the eggs. Oh, you broke an egg. Okay, how do we do that? Like, you are taking away this dream and these opportunities that we have. And I just think, if I have 1.5 acres, and I feel like we were very considerate of our neighbors where we put the coop. We thought about that. We are good owners. And I have 1.5 acres. My chickens are bothering nobody. In fact, all of my neighbors are here and they love us and they love our chickens. So I don't understand why you get to come in and say, you don't get them anymore when it's causing problems to nobody. I just think it's unfair. I also want to reiterate that people who aren't able to have chickens based upon the size of their lot or whatever zoning they are, I think everyone should have chickens. Everyone's gonna be happier. Chickens make the world happier.
Well, hey, if I could just politely interrupt, I must leave, but I want to just say a couple things before I need to go. First, I do feel like this ordinance is a bit too strict. With that said, I think that's what everybody has been kind of saying as well. But good fences do make good neighbors, so there may be a place for some type of ordinance, but maybe not this one. Anyway, with that said, moving on to the change in zone. This has come up before. We talked about having some smaller density, or and we as a city council we said that we could potentially be in favor of that. That I'm not speaking for any council member. I'm not making any promises on that. I'm just simply saying that, however, moving from RS 12 to R3 is a huge step. I feel that maybe we want to do the right thing, but I think the system is broken in this way, and we won't be able to do the right thing with the tools that we have. I think we need to think about modifying those. So with that said, that's all I have to say, and unfortunately, I apologize, I have to go. I've got a flight, so thank you, Gary. Probably sorry.
All right, and just to take advantage of this break, how many left have comments on the chicken ordinance? If you could raise your hands. Is it just the two of you? Let's go ahead, let's take these last two comments. I think there's been a lot of good dialogue. I think we're kind of getting to the point where we're starting to hear some of the similar things. So let's finish with these two so that we can proceed to discuss the ordinance.
Thank you. My name is Scott Penman. I've lived in Fruit Heights for approximately 35 years. I have no problems with chickens or rabbits, but I do have a problem with one bird. I don't know if this is a bird that you have to have with chickens, because I've never had chickens before, but it's called a guinea hen. And they're very annoying. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but I will try to play it real quick here for you. I can't get it to work. At any rate, do you need guinea hens to have chickens?
No.
Because they go for a half hour, an hour, at just a screaming sound. It just gets very annoying. Like I say, chickens and rabbits, I have no problem, but I'd like to see, and this may not be the right format for this, but I'd like to see them not allowed in Fruit Heights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, last but not least, I guess, huh? My name is David Hale. I've raised chickens for probably 20 years now, and I have, for a number of years, that also raised meat rabbits. Our kids have been taught how to do that and so forth. Because I was not raised doing that myself, I took a lot of time studying it out. There's all kinds of different methods of doing it. You can make it mobile, you can make it stationary, all kinds of different techniques. There's advantages and disadvantages to each of those techniques. And I can see from looking at the ordinances here, there's a lot of really good ideas that are in the community, some suggestions here. But to mandate a specific technique is probably not appropriate. I would actually propose that we have a small working group, perhaps a half dozen people who are strong proponents of raising animals and those who have genuine concerns. And then we refine this list and come up with another proposal for a regulation for the community. That's all.
Thank you. Any comments? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing at this time? Any second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so let's go ahead. We've had our public hearing. We now have the opportunity to talk about and discuss how we want to move forward with the proposed ordinance.
Can I just state that we as a planning commission did not write this ordinance. It was given to us just like everyone else. So we, the city with attorneys, like he said, they went off of other cities' ordinances, but we sitting here did not write this ordinance.
And just a reminder, the public hearing is closed.
Yeah.
So at this point, again, we're not trying to be distant, but the public hearing is closed. So this will be a discussion amongst the planning commission. So I understand there's still a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts here. We'll be discussing it with each other. We may ask questions to our staff who helps us out on these issues, but this is not an ongoing dialogue, question and answer session. But for any questions after the meeting is completely over, which who knows what time that will be tonight, feel free. I'd be happy to talk to you for a little bit. Okay.
It is. That was my comment. I just love everyone's comments. I love living in the city. I grew up in Syracuse. We had 3 acres. My dad was an engineer, but we had a farm. And I hated it because that's all I did. So they did everyone out our yard. So I just love people's comments. I love the idea of teaching children to work. I love all of that. I think there's a happy medium. I mean, the whole idea was to expand the ability for people to have chickens with this ordinance, so that have lots of things that are overreaching. I would probably say yes, it does. We don't need everything spelled out for us. But I also, like, as a neighbor, not every neighbor is always respectful. So there are certain things you have to put in place to make sure people can enjoy their property and their home, right? And in very small lots, maybe it's not appropriate to have a whole lot of chickens. I don't know, that's a discussion we're gonna have. But I think the idea is to find a happy medium that makes everyone be able to still love their community and appreciate the roots and where it came from. I love all the ideas of, I mean, that's how I do that. So I get it.
Right.
And I guess I echo that. I was raised on a farm.
Thank you again,
Another farm. And chicken coop burned down before I was born. You know, they was a big chicken coop on the farm. But so I know nothing about raising chickens and all of the details there. I think that's very prescriptive. I like when it's not on.
We just can't hear you.
I'll push it up a little closer.
Okay.
Think you have better.
Anyway, I think we need to consider, we've heard people voice that we need to expand it to other areas. And, you know, looking down the zones of the city, they're very complex. I mean, I looked at the bottom street is a village way, and it has 3 different zones on there. It goes from RS 12 to an R10 to an R112. I don't know how people keep track of where they are,
where the chickens are. So I think that causes a lot of confusion on who can have what. And I think we do need to address that. There might be some other things that are important. I don't know how big a deal it is for chickens getting out. Maybe Darren has more information on that.
I just had a couple general ideas. I know that it's RS-12 already has the right to certain livestock, and I think that should remain. And I think we could add a really simple provision in there saying this does not impact the rights set forth, and I can't remember the code section for RS-12, but essentially referencing that makes a lot of sense to me. That, you know, they already have, I think, probably greater rights than this provides. The purpose of this seems pretty clear, to allow those not within those zones to have an opportunity to raise chickens, and I think that's a good opportunity. So that was my first thought. You know, there's a couple things. Obviously, I think there were a lot of concerns about the enclosure and what it should look like, what size. I have not raised chickens. I don't know what the right, I mean, I think it makes sense that it needs to be a certain distance from property lines, especially when we're considering some of these smaller residential lots. I think we could probably be a little more broad about the construction of the coop and kind of focusing more on making sure that it's well built and well maintained. And frankly, this is just because I am a visual person. When I read something, it's that when it talks about being covered, ventilated 4 inches or 1/4 inch, and then it'll be buried at least 3 inches and bent outward, I couldn't envision what that meant. So that was hard for me to kind of comprehend. So I think maybe clarifying more broadly speaking that it needs to be kind of a steadfast built in a proper manner. And then I can understand the concerns about selling eggs. I mean, I guess my question, and this is kind of for Darren, Jeff, Brad. I mean, they couldn't, if someone's in the residential zone, we already have the restriction, they can't run a commercial operation, right? So I think that should be the backstop here. My kids sell their artwork that they drew, and I have neighbors who buy it, and I don't know why. So I get, you know, kids just kind of, it's de minimis, right? The idea that this is kind of minimal commerce. It's not, it's like a lemonade stand, right? And yes. And we're, depending on the lemonade, I'm not gonna crack down on a kid's lemonade stand. You know, some of those kids, they just put too much sugar, but that's just my personal opinion. So those were my general thoughts. I really appreciate, I thought there were a lot of good comments. I am in favor of the restriction on slaughtering. Again, this would not, I don't think, impact RS-12 the way that we would design this. But on these smaller lots, I think we kind of can create a public health issue. And certainly, we want enough detail about how these are built and maintained. Again, the comment about making sure we're not inviting more predators in and inviting more rodents because that's not a fun deal to deal with. So those were my thoughts, Jim.
No, the one thing on the slaughtering, to put it in comparison, it's legal to butcher a deer in your garage. And you know, that's a lot bigger animal, right, than a chicken. And I don't know where we go with that.
I guess I have a question. Is this something you saw in a lot of cities' codes, like the selling of eggs, the slaughtering of chickens? I mean, I don't know anything about chickens.
It just depends on which city and how tight there are in regulations.
Yeah, let me chime in on that. So there are a number of cities that it runs the gamut. You have lots of regulation, you have very little. The challenge becomes when, as you can see, I think from the majority of people that are here, most people are pro-chickens here. I would venture to guess that there are many that just didn't come. And it doesn't matter whether they are or not, but
They generate strong feelings on both sides. And I've seen it, I'm not just the city attorney for Fruit Heights, I do it for multiple cities. And I've been in meetings similar to this where the number that absolutely hated chickens, hated rats, and had neighbors with chickens that brought rats were just as frequent, just as numerous as many of you are here. So there are, and many of them have sent in emails to Planning Commission, to staff regarding their concerns. One of the other big things that comes up is roosters. And you know, a lot of people don't get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock a.m. every day, but the roosters do. So anyway, so in answer to your question, yes, there are cities that regulate this strictly in Utah, and there are others that don't. The more rural cities that you get, the fewer restrictions. Fruit Heights is nearly built out, and so it would be, you know, there are a lot of large lots, that's true, and this was never intended to affect those. One of the options that the Planning Commission would have tonight, rather than make a recommendation to this on the City Council, remand it back to staff, have staff come up with, you know, incorporating many of the comments that were made tonight, and go for round 2. That would be.
I love the idea because I don't think any of us are farmers up here, or currently in chickens, of people who are passionate about it, who know the ins and outs, the ups and downs about chickens, to, you know, have a maybe working session. I don't know if that's going to be a can of worms or not. I just think if it affects their daily lives, they know more than we do. I mean, I don't think attorneys study chickens and law school normally. So there's passionate people here who I would love their input on the ordinance. Like, this is necessary. I don't know if that's opening a can of worms or not. I don't know, but I love people who are passionate about something, be able to have their stamp on it.
Or we close this portion of the meeting?
Oh, these guys are with city, so we can
They're
talk
the
to them.
staff. They're
So
the
we can
staff.
talk to the staff. They're the attorneys in city, so they're the ones that do all the work.
They're advising us on our decisions here.
So, yeah, I mean, as far as the city council could suggest and say they would like to, I mean, you could request the city council appoint a committee of pro-chicken folks and anti-chicken folks if you want to come up with something like that. Have I seen that done in the past? Yes, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Not specifically for chickens, but.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I know, like, when we were getting ready for the general plan, there was kind of a working committee. There was a member of the city council, member of the planning commission, and then a handful of citizens who were, you know, involved. And, you know, that's small enough that you can kind of be mobile and figure things out and start writing things down. So I think that's an interesting idea. I think at very least, I agree. I don't have enough information to know how to best structure some of these things, but I think certainly an ordinance, I think I'm in favor of an ordinance because it expands that ability, and then just making sure it's tailored enough that it's not too hard to understand or to access, but it does have the protections that we've talked about to prevent some of the bad side effects of having chickens, and especially if someone is not maintaining it as well as we would hope they would.
And that's where the problems come, right? And everybody intends,
right?
You know, everybody intends to do it properly, and it's a good day
Yeah.
when they start out, and then life happens, and sometimes they're not able to do it. That's when, you know, there's rat infestation that happens. And I've
Right.
seen that
Yeah.
numerous times in many different cities.
So yeah, I think that's a good balance in discussion.
I am in favor of adding some type of zone, like lot size to this, only, you know, as some lots are really small, their yards are really small. I don't know how the demand for people on small lots want chickens, but I think it could be rough if we didn't put some type of parameter on lot size.
Right. That probably, you know, we do have some small lots, and
And add that to the ordinance before it's.
yes. But I really like your idea and I know it's maybe a failed other places, but we need to get input from our community. And particularly in areas where we don't have or very little expertise. So it would be good to have people, and we can have people that come that are not in favor of it, and people that know how this works and what things would really be effective to put in place. I like that idea. And I think as a planning commission, we should have opportunity to review things, I think, before it gets to this point here.
I think to your point, when this was received, when I received it, just late last week, I had a lot of similar questions that have been voiced tonight. Sorry about that. I had a lot of questions as well that were voiced tonight, and in asking questions, my understanding was that it was not to necessarily limit, but to expand and to clarify. It's my understanding the city does get calls and with some frequency, not exactly how much, basically asking questions about it. And so I'm sure that there's lots of people that don't even understand enough, right, what the regulations are. I grew up with chickens. I don't currently have chickens, but I have neighbors that have chickens, and I have neighbors, I don't know if they're still here, but they were here, whose chickens are in my backyard with some frequency. And it's okay, it doesn't bother me at all. Whether we decide at a working group or whether we just go back and ask the city to revise this based on the input received, I'm okay with it. But my take and my understanding is that it is more to open up or to give more opportunity and to clarify rather than to restrict. So if that's the intent, then that's my understanding. That's what I would support.
Cool. Brian, do you have some thoughts that you want to share?
We need to do something. We probably should put some kind of ordinance in place. I mean, restricted based on lot size or something. Someone made a comment about not everybody should have average should have chickens, and I was thinking, I don't think so. Not everybody should have chickens. I mean, there's a lot of experienced people with chickens here, but there's probably a lot of inexperienced people out there with chickens, and there's 8,000 people in the city here, so. There's lots of small ones, 8,000 square feet, like Lloyd Road, there's houses that have, those are some of those postage stamp lots. If one of them decided to go to Cal Ranch and buy a coop and then just throw some feed out there, they wouldn't be experienced chicken operators like some of you. So, I mean, that could be a problem. But at the same time, it's not a good idea to tell people, you know, there's someone that had an acre and a third. You can pretty much run your own show, that's fine. So it's probably a good idea to do something. I mean, like that, the ordinance as it's written right now seems like it's not a good idea, but at the same time, it's gotta be restricted based on lot size. I mean, it can't be in an R3 or an R18, probably not even in the R10. 10,000 square feet is too little. Even 12,000 square feet is only a quarter. It's a little bit more than a quarter acre. And that's small. So yes, there's great people that know what they're doing, but there's also some that don't know what they're doing. So the ordinances are placed to protect neighbors, you know, that aren't good neighbors. So clearly there's a room full of good neighbors here, but I liked Hale. He had a great working group. I think that was a good idea.
Yeah.
And I'd like to move on. Maybe let's get a motion going for that regard, or have if someone's interested, maybe they can get with Darren, put together a working group, and let's go from there. But I don't think we're at a point where let's strike this.
Right.
Motion. I'd say let's change it. I think there's a lot of things we can strike from this. We do need some kind of ordinance. So.
Yeah. No, I think that was a great clarification comment. I was going to say we talked an awful lot about chickens tonight, but this is chickens and rabbits, and I think they're two different animals, and we're trying to lump them together. I'm not sure that the same
restrictions on a bunny would be appropriate, like on lot size. I know people have rabbits and you never see them. So I'm wondering if those two should be separated.
That's a good comment. So I think, in general, I think this is a really good step in the right direction. And then I'm kind of in agreement. I think we're pretty well in agreement until we see the vote and I see what actually happens. But I think we're pretty much in agreement to remand it back to staff and maybe with this idea of potentially a working group. And I think that might include a city councilor, a member of the planning commission, member of staff, and then a handful of citizens, both those who have expressed for and against, to try to continue to work on this. I think this is a launching pad and appreciate staff's work on this, and that'd be my recommendation. So I'm ready to entertain any motions that anyone would like to propose.
I can make a motion to, I don't know the right word, suggest to city council, a working group to discuss, this proposal further. To continue to refine it, and like anything else, it'll continue to come back to this group as well as city council until an ultimate vote is taken. But currently, just to continue to refine, through some sort of a working group with citizens.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. I think that passed unanimously. Brian, did I see? Okay. All right, so I think we're closed out on that portion of the meeting on the chickens or rabbits. We can now proceed to our second public hearing. This one is regarding the rezone from RS12 to R3 located at 1357 East 650 North. And this is labeled the East Mountain Townhomes. And so someone from staff will give us some background on this.
Kevin, real quick.
Yes, please.
Maybe it'd be appropriate to take a quick recess, and those that are not here for that be free to leave.
Good call. No, yeah, you're right. Why don't we take just a couple minutes, 5 minutes. Everyone, if you're only here for the rabbits and the chickens, thank you for coming. Thank you for your support and your inputs. And we'll reconvene in a couple minutes here. Yes, do I need to vote on this? Do I need to vote?
What? You guys opened the whole coop on that one. Boy, I guess.
Our cats, like, bring us something else. Like kick shop.
We raise this big ruckus over there. I knew this was gonna happen.
Yeah, when you guys put limits and then
They don't listen, they don't listen. I just said, you're gonna raise a big ruckus, you should wait and see, and of course, there you go. It's all unnecessary too.
And then when Jared brought up the 50-50 thing, I was like, dude, if you were talking about dogs, 50-50, talk about cats, 50-50. Some people like that, I don't know why you're bringing that up.
We should just go back to, we should just drop the whole thing and just leave it alone.
Yeah.
That's keep the most amount of people happy.
Yeah.
And let people just work it out. Come in here and say, this is, we're out of control. We're not here now.
My other question.
All right. Yeah, I suspect.
So, why are we creating a huge issue?
It'll be gone soon. I would recommend you just
See ya.
Just drop here, yeah.
That would make my life so much better. When they limited it, tried to limit the number of chickens and the selling the
There was never
eggs.
the intent to take away anybody's rights. This was all about, should we add more rights to people that currently don't have them? And when you get down on like 8,000 and 10,000 square foot lots, I don't think you should be keeping chickens.
I agree, like over at Talbot's, when I go there, the houses are like,
yes,
I can touch my neighbor. Those people, I agree. Those shouldn't happen.
So if we're not gonna help the people that
you're concerned about,
we're concerned about, don't tick off everybody else. Right?
I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yes.
Hopefully we're getting all upset over something really minor and stupid.
All right, I think we're about ready to start in just 1 minute. If you want to come back in and take your seats. Thank you, everybody.
Did Heidi step out or she still? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there she is. I see her right there.
Oh, yeah. It's okay, Heidi, we're not waiting or anything. No, you're good. You're doing your civic duty. You're doing good.
She thought I applied to her almost.
Oh, gotcha.
So I said,
No.
will you? And have more than 10 to do it.
RS12 or whatever. Okay. All right. All right, Jeff, I think we're ready for you.
I thought more people would go home. Yeah. So I just want to give some background on this rezone. I want to talk about where we're at right now, what happened in the past and what's being presented. And then we'll kind of see where we go. If you can pull up that subdivision, the B and J subdivision, yeah, and then just go down to the plat.
keep going, right there. So I just wanted to, this is just a good background, just to have with the planning commission on where we're at. Joe Christensen developed the B&J subdivision a few years ago, and it's 4 lots. It's these 4 lots right here on 650 North. And so this is the current situation as it exists today. And let me just go up to the map and show you. There's a house here, and then this is a vacant lot. And then what he's proposing to rezone is these 2 lots, lot 1 and 2. So that's the topic of discussion, is lots 1 and 2. Okay, now pull up the map that we discussed last time that this came before the planning commission, the one that shows the 8 units. I can't remember what that's called. That right there. So this came in, was this a year ago or a year and a half ago? It's been 2 years ago now, close to 2 years. So, and I'm just trying to keep my comments fairly brief, but Mr. Christensen came in with this plan to rezone this piece of property, which is R112. By the way, R112 doesn't allow chickens. And he wanted to put these 8 units, so rezone it from R112 to R3. R3 is a higher density zone. Short of the end of the story was the planning commission sent a recommendation to deny that rezone to the city council. And there was a lot of discussion. We had a lot of people here, and there was a lot of reasons and things like that. But ultimately, you decided to say, no, we don't think this is a good idea. So you sent a negative recommendation to the city council to deny that rezone of that piece of property. The council took just a slightly different tack than the planning commission, and they said that we're going to deny it, but we would consider a proposal if it came back that was only 6 units, not 8. And so that ultimately, there was a whole bunch of discussion again about all that, but that ultimately the council said, we may consider this if they come back with a proposal of 6. So Joe went back to the drawing board, and he's now come back, and he's got 3 different renditions. So if you can just kind of start to pull those up, and we can see what he's come back with. Okay, so here's one here, and there's 3 of these, and all of them have 6 units. You can see that this is still the 2 lots. It's lot 1 and 2 is the area that's impacted. But this is a rendition that shows 3 separate buildings attached, and 2 units in each building. Go ahead and go to the next one. We can come back to these. I just kind of want to show you these 3 different ideas. Here's another one, 4 on one side, 2 on the other side. This would be a private driveway basically coming off of 650 North. And there's one more. Yeah, so this one's 4 on one side and then 2 down on the end. So he's essentially come back to the city and said, based on the city council's comments, would this be acceptable in some form or fashion? I've come back and I'm showing this 6 units. So this is what I kind of just want to let the planning commission know. This is what's being proposed, and these are what I think your options are. Number 1, you're under no obligation whatsoever to rezone property. You don't have to do it. You can just say, no, we're not gonna do it, and everybody goes home. He's still got 2 lots that he can sell and build houses on. Those are already approved. You can, and there's been, I think, some misnomer about this. You can rezone those 2 lots to another zone. He's proposing that this goes to R3. You have the ability to rezone that property to R3. And if the rezone is done, he would have to come in and amend the subdivision because it's 2 lots, and this is what, so he has to amend the subdivision, basically combining those 2 lots and doing one of these proposals. So it's legal. What he's proposing here is legal to do. You can go down this road. You don't have to go down this road.
May I ask a question here?
Yes.
So with this, what kind of property is this? We don't really have a flag lot ordinance. So is this?
What's being proposed fits under the guise of the R3 zone. So this is the kind of development that you could see in an R3 zone. We have R3 zoning in a few places in the city, namely, down at the bottom of Nichols Road, that's all R3. And there's a couple of things on the other side of the highway, very small lot zoning. And so there's a few places, not many, in the city where this has been done. I think the comment that I really want to make, beyond that, you have the option to go down either one of these roads if you want to or don't want to, is that remember that we got the eyes of the legislature on us, and we have been directed or required as a city to consider affordable housing options. And one of the things that we did a year ago is we adopted 5 different things that we would work on as a city. They happen to be, and Brad will remember this, the only 5 things that we could have even remotely qualified for out of this list of, how many was there on there? 25 things? Yeah, there was 5 things that we could even hope to do. I mean, this is a small city that's nearly built out. I mean, what do they expect? But we did say that one of the things that we said is that we would consider areas, and we would look for, and we would consider areas of the city to look for rezoning for higher density, thus making some more affordable housing options. And I'll let Joe talk about what affordability these things may or may not have. I don't really know, but we've had a couple of developers in the city that we've inquired, do you want to do something higher density? And said, no, we don't want it. This is what we want to do. We want to do 12,000-foot lots. I'm just saying that here's an opportunity that's in front of the city. This is one of the things that you could consider. It would be nice, just from I think a city standpoint, to be able to point to a few places in the city where we've done some things and we've had some success. Whether this is the right place to do it or not, I don't know. At the end of the day, you've got to decide that. I don't know if it's the right place to do it. I'm just saying that we're not that far away from having to report to the state on what we've done. And I can tell you we've done nothing, because there hasn't been anything that's really come before us to even do anything about. So that's just a little bit of background on where we're at and where we have been. And so I'm sure we'll hear some more public comment. We can answer questions. Joe Christensen's here. I'm sure he's happy to answer any questions that people have about details and things like that. So I'll leave it right there unless you have a question for me now, but you can ask it after too.
Okay.
1 and 2. So this is lots 1 and 2, 1 and 2.
There's 2 lots there. It's shown as 1, but it's 2.
Yeah, there's 2 building lots there. So we combine those together.
So lots 3, what we're seeing there is the proposed 3.
No, lot 1 and 2. Lot 1 and 2. I know that says total lot 3, but that's really lot 1 and 2. This is maybe this is 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to call this 3 and 4, but I think the subdivision that I have actually has this as 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So this
That's correct.
is just wrong. This is 1 and 2. Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make that motion to public hearing to discuss the request for rezone.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. So same requests apply, 2 to 3 minutes. If you'd like to share something, please approach the podium, let us know your name, and be respectful, civil. I know there's a lot of strong feelings, but we are a city of good neighbors. So we'll proceed.
I know that I am Andrew Bird again. I just wanted to ask any questions, but I know that I couldn't. So if you could jot them down. So I read this city plan. I just want to say, great job on this. I read 156 pages since it came up, and this is really good. So did you guys read this? This is nice. I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually. And in it was clear that just what he said came up. They were like, we're going to look at these lots and we're going to look for high density, and it was written in the plan in 2023, and it was clear, and it's explained today. My only questions that I would ask is, here on page 21 of the city plan, and a lot of this says we want to get multifamily residential, but my understanding that was to come from potential sale of the golf course, if that was to ever come up. So I'd like to see how that's addressed. My second one on page 21, it said here, we want to maintain the views. And policy 1.1 says implementation measure preserve existing ordinances and codes that support single-family dwellings in established neighborhoods. And then establish detailed guidelines, educational information, general plan amendments, while occasionally necessary and desirable, should be based on changing circumstances. And down here, as it goes on, implementation, limit land use transitions to single step in density. So low density to medium density, for example, not low density to high density. And then as you progress down, you see that the number one concern, as you requested, one of the concerns, the major concerns, was multifamily homes. It says most controversial topics was multifamily zoning, but the most clear thing that people wanted was single family homes. So the high density affordable homes, 2 comments express a desire for affordable higher density, so we're looking for that. But then it says here, preserving single family neighborhoods was the most important objective for the future of the city. And I'm not sure that these things go together. I guess after reading all this, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to understand how they connect, which is, how do we know that this won't expand to everywhere? And if that's the case, as I'm down the corner here, if we do this lot by lot rezoning rather than whole group rezoning, am I behind the 8 ball? If we rezone it all, let's rezone it all, and we can all, I can do 12, units there or something similar. And I'm fine if that's the argument. And then I just like to know how we go from lot by lot zoning. I understand the city plan, and I thought it was great, just what he said. It's everything you spelled out in 2023. But those would be my questions: is, do we have any guarantees or any idea that it stops? And we provide some places, but it's not open market everywhere, because there's a lot of elderly folks with large land. And the way the city's going, I mean, you walk down Layton today and you go residential, 7-foot apartment building, and you say, where did this come from? And I just don't know. I thought the part of planning was to say, this is where these things go together. That's just my understanding. So if you could address any of those whenever you have an opportunity, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Caroline Eichelberger. I appreciate his comments. One of my concerns was precedents, and my understanding is you're not a court of law and you don't have to abide by precedents, and that you can take everything on a case-by-case basis. But I am also concerned that if you consider it precedents and you will say, well, we approve this, so we have to prove that, then I am opposed to it. I also stand with all abutting landowners because it's not my backyard, but it is someone else's backyard. And this is an exception that's being asked for, something exceptional. And, you know, what they moved into, what they were counting on, you know, I think it should stand unless they support it. I know we purchased our lot because we couldn't see in our neighbors' windows and the lot sizes were big. And I would be very upset if the zoning around me got changed so that I did have a house right over my fence and I could see into my neighbors' windows. I also, yes, would much prefer single family to connected townhomes. And I'm frustrated with the legislature, but in popular areas where the land value is high, I don't know how you're going to get affordable housing. It's like moving to the beach in Southern California. You will not get affordable housing there. Everyone wants to live there. So.
Thank you.
Suzanne Horsley, I am reading a letter on behalf of some neighbors. Marquesa and Matt Van Dromelen, they're in Spain for 3 months with their family, and they wrote this letter, and I'm reading it for them. It's dated March 22nd, 24. It's regarding rezoning of JB subdivision lots to the Planning Commission and City Council of Fruit Heights, Utah. Dear Fruit Heights leadership, my wife Marquesa and I moved into our new custom home on 650 North last August. This is our dream home that we have worked for 20 years to be able to afford, and now we can finally raise our family here in this wonderful city of Fruit Heights. As soon as we moved here, we were overwhelmed with the sense of community and friendliness of the wonderful people here. This is truly a special place. When we were deciding on where to build our dream home, we contacted Joe Christensen, a family friend, who said he had 4 single family lots that he had just subdivided, and we could purchase one of those from him. Lot number 3 was already promised to another buyer, but the other 3 were available. We almost purchased lot number 1 as he was discounting it due to its shape, but ultimately we decided to purchase lot number 4. As we were constructing our dream home, we were shocked to find out that Joe had decided to change course and try to do high-density housing in the other lots of our new subdivision. It had been represented to us that these were single-family lots, not multifamily. The good news is that due to the master zoning plan of Fruit Heights showing our neighborhood as single-family/rural, his plan was denied by the Planning Commission and City Council. Now, once again, suddenly this issue has come up. We are opposed to the proposed zoning change for several reasons. Number 1, this is in conflict with the master plan of Fruit Heights. My background as a real estate appraiser, civil engineer, and land developer for Ivory Homes, I understand how important city planning is. A city plan and zoning laws protect the property rights of all its residents. Otherwise, you end up with cities looking like Brazil and other third world countries where you have high-rise buildings next to single-family homes next to factories. The city plan of Fruit Heights clearly shows this area as RS12. I know because I never would have bought a lot in this subdivision without checking the current zoning and master plan zoning. One might accurately point out that there are multifamily units on the lot next to Joe's. I agree. This is reasonable as Mountain Road /89 is a major transit corridor. See general plan page 49. However, major corridors such as commercial corridors don't turn and go down side streets. Therefore, it is reasonable to allow high density zoning along the corridor, but deny high density as it continues down side streets that are not major named corridors. Number 2, this sets a dangerous precedent for the city, given the fact that the master plan shows RS12, the least dense land use, changing the actual current zoning to R3, the most dense land use, without first reviewing and changing the master plan sets a dangerous precedent for the city. Any developer could argue that any piece of vacant land that exists in the city could be changed to high-density zoning. After all, the city did it for Joe without regard to the master plan of the city. On what grounds could the city deny a future land developer from putting high-density developments on any piece of land, no matter its location? No, we must be a city that is well planned. We have a master plan that was well thought out and scrutinized. Following that plan will protect the integrity of existing neighborhoods by ensuring developments in specific and appropriate areas. Number 3, the loss of future development control. Joe's current development plan does not take advantage of the full allowed use under R3 yet. Once the land has been rezoned, however, there is little the city can do to stop the development of higher density as long as it is under R3 guidelines that permit up to 25 units per acre after criteria 1 is met. See table B-12 and description on page 139 of Fruit Heights General Plan. There is no other intermediate zoning in the code. Once the maximum is allowed by a zone change, it is a done deal, and Joe or any other future owner could develop the property to its maximum use. Unfortunately, Joe has already changed his plans once by telling me that these lots were all single-family homes and now changing the plans to high density. If the city is trying to create more affordable housing, once again, there is no guarantee that these units would qualify for affordable housing once developed. R3 does not require moderate pricing of the units sold.
Suzanne, I apologize, we're coming up on 5 minutes. Is
That's
there a
okay.
way to kind of shortcut to the?
My name's Frank Hunt, and I'm gonna have her read,
She can take mine as well.
Thanks, Rob. This is not just about these 2 lots. This is a precedent that the city is setting, and it will remove a layer of protection that all city residents currently have under our zoning laws. Even City Ordinance 10-14-2D states that the land should be 1 acre minimum, as Joe's property is only 0.85 acres. I strongly encourage the governing body of this city to follow the codes, plans, and ordinances it has already put in place and deny this motion for a zone change. Your neighbors, Matt and Marquesa Van Drumlin.
Thank you.
My name is Rafe Mumford. My wife's Lori Mumford. We live on 608 Quail Ridge Road. Everybody's kind of stole my thunder, but I did want to close out. We had a final, because they've covered all the points, so I'm not going to be redundant. But what I don't understand is, and I'm not speaking for everybody, and I understand that Mr. Christensen would like to, make a buck. God bless him. So do I. If he could settle for something more modest in terms of, we don't want high rises, we want single family homes on those 2 properties. So, and again, they stole my thunder, but I do heartily agree with all the previous statements, and I think I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
My name is Terry Darker. I live at 640 Quail Ridge Road. As a property owner, and resident of the area, I want to object to granting a zoning change that would forever degrade the quality of our neighborhood. I have a petition here, and I just passed it out, signed by 35 residents living near the proposed project who also object to any zoning change. Joe Christensen has requested zoning change for his lot on 650 North to R3. In July 22, the Fruit Heights Planning Council denied his similar request for the same property. Upon appeal, the City Council also denied the zoning change. The purpose of zoning is to protect the property rights of the existing residents in the area. Nothing that has occurred in the state legislature has taken this away. Zoning is still constitutional, legal, and enforceable. I would invite the Planning Commission to revisit the reasons for the previous denial. I am unaware of any material facts or conditions that have changed since then. I'm not opposed to growth, development, or change as long as it's done correctly within the confines of the law and the city's general plan. I'm opposed to rezoning this particular lot for 5 different reasons specific to this proposal. The 2 subject lots are part of a 4-lot subdivision. The other 2 lots have already been sold to 2 separate buyers, and at least one of them, the Van Dremlins, have objected to rezoning any of their subdivisions. There's a possibility for the bait and switch. If the R3 zoning is approved under some conditional agreement, what would prevent Mr. Christensen from either then developing or selling to another developer who could develop to the maximum capacity allowed by the R3 zoning? Rezoning the lot to R3 does not comply with the city's general plan. I believe that granting the zoning would set a precedent that could attract other developers to move in, exploit not only our neighborhood, but any neighborhood in Fruit Heights. This development as proposed would substantially degrade the quality of our neighborhood. Our city government represents the interests of all residents and landowners. Why would any city prioritize the interests of an outside developer over the interests of residents who live in the neighborhood? Thank you.
My name is Virginia Kate. We have lived in Fruit Heights for 39 years, and we live on Oakmont Circle, which is adjacent to 650 North. It's north of 650 North. I have a letter that was written by Cynthia and Robert Dankers, who also live on Quail Ridge, and because they've asked us not to repeat reasons and so on, I'm not going to read the whole letter to you, except to state that the Dankers and we, our son who lives next door to us, and others in our neighborhood object to changing the zoning. I wanted to just state that zoning R3, which is what Joe has proposed, could allow a structure to a height of 45 feet with only 8 feet from the side property and 15 feet from the back property line. Definitely, if suppose that this property, the zoning was changed and someone else purchased that instead of Joe building his property there. Can you imagine buildings 45 feet high in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood? I wanted to just read from the general plan, page 16. It states that single-family residential land use category supports and preserves existing single-family residential development in place per current zoning. Future infill development should be consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. I believe for the integrity of our city, and I know that Dankers agree with this, that we should maintain the plan as it was developed and retain the R12, the RS12 zoning for this area. Thank you.
My name is Robert Glantz. I live on Oakmont Lane. I have to tell you, one of the reasons why I moved here was because of the area and because of the zoning. I could have horses. I could have chickens. I could be in an environment that you cannot find almost anywhere else in Davis County. That is value. What's happening here is not value. It's not going to add value to our community in the way that we need it. I searched for this. Not only did I search for it, the lot that I had was being proposed to be split into two. The lot that I have right now was being proposed to be split into two, and they were going to sell it as two lots. I bought both lots to make sure that that didn't happen. That is what we need, is we need to stay within the organized fashion of the neighborhood. If you look at the maps, you've got RS12 and you've got ag. You're going to drop right in the middle of all of this great neighborhood, a really dense area that's going to decrease the value of the property around us and the value of living there. That's all I have to say.
My name's Linda Stapp, and I live on 1355 Oakmont Lane. And I am also opposed to this ordinance, to this rezoning. And I just kind of want to reiterate what Andrew said, is like, if you rezone this, so I am in agreement with him, is like, if you want to rezone this little area, then why don't you rezone the whole city? So all of us can sell our property and get the money out of our property so that we can have high density everywhere. So that everybody can just, we can build homes everywhere, and then we can move to where they don't do high density, because that's why we lived here. And so, because that's what you're taking away from us. And so if you do that and when we had this discussion 2 years ago, there was a man on the planning commission, and he said, there is already a set of condos at the bottom of that street. And he said, so what is to stop us from putting condos all the way up, and if we let this one go through? And that's exactly right. If we let this one go through, then there's land up at the top of the street, and there's land over there. And so what is to stop all of this from keeping growing? And Mr. Christensen has had this land for 2 years since it was denied. And there's been no upkeep at all on the property, and I don't blame him. But it's also like a construction zone over there. He hasn't paid, I looked on the county thing there, he hasn't paid any taxes on it for 2 years. 22, 23, the no taxes have been paid on that land and on any of those lots. And I just think I'm not sure that and what's to stop him from, the Talbot homes that just are east of us, they had lots and lots of restrictions, and then he sold to a developer, and he had all these restrictions that he wanted, and then he sold that to somebody else who didn't include any of his restrictions. So what's to prevent somebody from a developer just selling to a developer and they can do whatever they want to? There's just no restrictions on developers. It's just, they just kind of come in and do what they want to. So I say the city of good neighbors. What does that mean? Does it mean having developers come in and making our city the way that they want it, or us as good neighbors telling the developers how we want it? I hope the Planning Commission will do its job and truly plan the city. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dale Cumble, and I'm a property owner here in Drew Heights, and I love that all of you are here expressing your views in a grassroots way. But I've already expressed this publicly, many of you have probably seen that. But as a property owner, I believe we should be afforded the rights to develop our property, to use our property. Earlier in the previous public hearing, we listened to people who wanted to assert their rights to use their property the way that they saw fit. They rejected the notion of the size of structures to be built on their property. And so what I believe is we should allow people to thoughtfully develop their property, abide within the constraints of the ordinances and the laws that are set forth in our community, and allow that. Now, it was interesting that out of all the neighbors who have come and opposed this particular development, only the one prior to me even acknowledged the very similar property that is just to the west that already exists. 650 North is also pretty much a public thoroughfare with the amount of county properties that public has access to along that road, in addition to access to the East Wilderness Park. It's not like adding 6 more single-family homes, even though it's characterized as multifamily, is really going to increase the amount of traffic that goes through that road. I understand everybody's concerned about turning our city into some sort of condo like downtown Roy or Clinton or Lincoln as reference. But I do believe the zoning commission and the city council has the ability to do conditional rezoning. So the fears of we approve this R3 and Joe decides to sell it to somebody else and then they just come and ignore that. The approval can be done on a conditional basis that only what is proposed would be built. And so anyway, my comments, our nation was built on the idea of property owners being able to exert their rights and execute their rights. And I find it offensive that so many people have come and emotionally expressed wanting to use their property in one way and denying another property owner the ability to develop as they see fit. So thank you.
Thank you.
I promised myself I was going to talk about chickens tonight. And I find myself being.
Oh, what was your name again? Sorry, sir.
I'm sorry?
What was your name?
Chris Christensen.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I'm Joe Christensen's dad. I'm proud of what he's trying to do. I moved in that lot number 2. It's White House is there. We moved there. My dad built that in the early mid-60s. So I've lived around. I grew up there, moved out, came back for a while, moved out, and then I live at the top of that same road on 650 North. So I've been around a long time. I've been around long enough that there wasn't anybody else living other than Merlin Ward to the south of us. That was all Cherry Wood. And north of us, there was before the March Jess and her husband bought that. There was just nothing there. I thought my dad owned that whole thing. So I've watched us in Fruit Heights slowly develop. And there are several old timers here who have seen this exact same thing, slowly develop with exactly these same types of concerns as this evolved over time. I get that. I also appreciate the opportunity that people can come and have this kind of civil discussion. We don't necessarily agree. We're not going to agree when we walk out there either. I get that. I don't have a problem with that. But I do want to clarify a couple of quick things. Joe's name is Joseph Lon Christensen, named after my father, Lon Christensen. In all of our discussions, I'm very aware of what Joe's wanting to do there. He's not wanting to do anything that would be a black eye on his grandfather. He's wanted to put something in there that would look appropriate and be an asset to the community. I just noticed they're gonna be, when they're all done, I'm gonna invite everyone over to my house, assuming they get approved. Everyone over to my house, and when they're done, we're gonna have a barbecue over there, and we're just gonna celebrate. I'm not exactly sure what that will look like now, but my point is that, and I appreciate the previous comment here, I'm a great believer in personal property rights. I don't want the government telling me how to raise chickens, what size units they gotta be put in, and how it ought to be built. I just think that's way over the top. And I also don't want the government telling us what we can and can't do on our own property. I do agree that all of you have bought your homes in Fruit Heights with a certain expectation. But the law does allow for these kinds of considerations to be able to change the zoning for this type of accommodation. If I understand correctly, the road that goes across the steakhouse up there is going to come all the way over by the compound, and then down 650, which will once again makes that a major thoroughfare, more so than it ever has been before. All of that's evolved. The growth of what's happening in Fruit Heights is tough, and we're almost built out. So these kinds of meetings, there's a couple more views. There's a couple of cherry orchards and an apple orchard, not much left to develop in this city. But these are 6 or 8 units that will be beautifully put in. They're going to bring children into a community. We almost have no children, and no children in the Burgess family. We're starving for kids around. We'd love to have some more children around. These are 3 or 4 bedrooms. This is Joe's thunder. I hope he gets a chance to talk here in just a second. But these are 3 or 4 bedroom homes. It will be a two-story, and old folks are going to buy those steps. Young people buy that and bring families and children in here. The very thing that we all came to when we bought into Fruit Heights to start with. You have people who want to be able to come to do this. Really? We're going to tell them that they can't do that?
We're coming up on 5 minutes. I apologize for interrupting.
Thank you. Let me wrap up and just say that I want you to know these will be beautifully done when they're done. And you're not going you won't feel bad about it then. But I also would agree the risk that's been raised here, I've seen happen in other cities, and I appreciate that we got to pay attention. And the city has to let us know that they're not going to allow that type of abuse to take place. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Scott Nielsen. I just came here to serve down. What I really wanted to emphasize, number one, was something that Jeff said before. If you approve this rezoning, the concern was brought up that then they could just build a Walmart on it tomorrow or whatever applies to rezone. But as Jeff mentioned, there's 2 lots right there, and so to do that, they have to come back with a subdivision, have to do an amended subdivision, and at that time, you can put whatever limitations and things on it, so that they will have to stick by what they're saying. The second thing is I do want to reiterate one thing. I really do believe that the principles, the underlying principles, should be freedom and markets, in my opinion, number one. There's nothing special about real estate that markets don't work. I mean, I think markets work in real estate. And somebody commented that if you don't have zoning, you're going to have Rio de Janeiro or something. That's not true. The city of Houston, Texas has a 0 zoning. There's not a zoning law in the entire city. And it's not Rio de Janeiro. What it is a bunch of people who can look at the market and come up with very innovative ways to meet their housing requirements without all of the red tape in the government overreach saying, no, you have to abide by this centrally planned system that we created. And by the way, that's another thing. People point to the central plan, the general plan of the city. And while I'm sure that's a great document and lots of hours have gone into it, I just can't help but think the Soviet commissars would be thrilled by something like that. I mean, that's exactly the kind of stuff they try to do, centrally plan markets to be perfect or whatever, and you don't end up with a good result in that. In essence, a good result meaning it's good for us here in Provides, but it's bad for our kids and everybody else who's trying to buy a house at this point. It's fantastic for my house, it's gone way up, but honestly, it's wrong. To me, it's morally wrong to take their money and transfer it to me as the property owner, because I'm unwilling to let markets work. So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Christensen, the village you don't know me. What's going on here is what I'm trying to build and help other families have, right? The sense of community. I grew up in Fruit Heights. I ran up and down all 650 North up through the Vita Course, created all sorts of hell, lit little fires, put them out, went to the dog pound, pet puppies, right? That's what I grew up doing. Same things that these kids in these homes would grow up doing as well. There's been some things that have gone around that were a high rise, whatever. That was never talked about. Well, actually, in one conversation with Brandon Green, I sat in his office, and he said, well, we could go R3, then you could go high rise. I said, okay, that's the only time that was ever brought up by me. We joked about it. And we went from that to 12 to 10, and then 8. And then it came down to 6. And at the last that city council says, okay, we'll get back to you. Well, we never got back. Brandon Green hired. I want to bring this back up because I do think this is a great thing for the city. Like my dad said, my middle name is Ron Christensen. When he sold the bottom lot to have those other units developed, he wasn't happy about it. There was a need there. He sold it. He respected the rights of the gentleman that built those, right? So what I'm trying, I agree with you. If I was putting this in the middle of a neighborhood, that would be a bigger issue. But we're at 6 on 650, closer to 89, and the master plan's across from another potentially multifamily zoning area, but it does fit in there really well. And the access that it gives to 89 and up to the trails is a very unique place. It will be a great benefit to the city. And believe me, my dad lives at the top of the street. I'm up and down that street all the time. This is my grandparents' land. There is no way that I want to come in here and build something that's ugly or high density that is a burden on that city. I have great respect for the neighbors around me. I talked with Dave. Dave's passionate about it not being there. He wants it to stay that way. Gary Garber, a great friend. From my grandparents, all through the years. I respect all those opinions, but I really do believe this will add to the city's value. These are not, the homes around this is these are gonna be between 5, maybe 6.5 for when they sell. This is not gonna pull down. Typically, for traffic above 12 units is when you start to impact traffic. These are gonna be 6 units, not 8. 8, although we have the max, we talked about the development agreement with Mrs. Moss brought up in that last city council was 6 units with the development agreement for that. Now, I'm willing to sign that today, that I will not put any more than 6. That's what I'm here for, is the 6 units. That's it.
Thank you.
We have this gentleman here. Are there any others after this gentleman who will be planning on making comments? Okay, so we'll wrap up with you, sir.
My name is Dave Runyon. I live at 1350 South Mountain. As Joe mentioned, I'm on the property directly to the south. I'm gonna give Joe his credit. He's come back, this is the first time I've seen these different plans. He is absolutely right, I don't want anything. But my wife and I have discussions all the time, and I don't always get what I want, so I understand that life's gonna go on. And Joe's right, I mean, last year we were on the mountain at midnight, driving an out off the mountain. So he and I are gonna be friends whatever way this thing goes. If you want to read a letter or an excerpt from what the mayor sent me, And he said, I can clear up that the city is not considering the rezone request on 650 North to satisfy a state mandate of affordable housing. I'm the last speaker, so you can go and throw stuff at me. That is one of the shields this group was hiding behind in previous meetings. This is why we have to do it. We have to do it to meet the state mandate. We have to do it, or the state's gonna take money away from us. I would like to know if there is a precedence in this state, has the state withheld funding from any city for not meeting something?
Is that the end of your comments?
That's a question. I mean, does anybody have the answer to that?
It's not so much a question of the answer, but if you have further comments, we'd be happy to hear you out.
I have no further comments.
Thank you. All right. Thank you everyone for your time and for your comments. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion to close the public hearing.
Any second?
For the reason.
A second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, no, I appreciate there was a lot of good comments. Appreciate everyone coming in today. I know a community is only as strong as the extent to which its citizens participate in the civic process. So we very much appreciate you guys being involved. I mean, personally, I wasn't present in the summer when Mr. Christensen first came. I wasn't able to hear it on that first level. I think there's room for multifamily in our community. As an adult, for 12 years of my adulthood, I lived in multifamily. That was what was available to me. That's what I could afford. I think there's a lot of negative stigma about multifamily residents. I think there's a lot of negative stigma about multifamily. I don't buy into it. I think that there's been good comments made about the surrounding area. There is multifamily just nearby. I think this would be a good opportunity for us as a city to increase some affordability in some of the housing in our area. There's not a lot of options for us to do that. I think this is a good opportunity for us. Those are my opinions on it.
Can I ask a couple just clarifying questions? So it was brought up a couple times about the city being able, if it was rezoned R3, the city's ability to limit the activity or the number of units. I know that there's a lot of comments both ways, but can we clarify what?
So just so that everyone understands, if the city council so the planning commission makes a recommendation, city council is the one that has the zoning authority. So what happens here tonight is not going to be a zone change. This is just a recommendation. But to answer your question, if you recommended to rezone it R3 without any conditions, and then the council rezoned it R3, then he could build the maximum number of units. That's accurate. But if you make that condition, if let's say the planning commission tonight says, we make a positive recommendation, so long as it's conditioned upon Mr. Christensen entering into a development agreement that limits his units to 6 units, then absolutely that is a contractual agreement that, and the council would, assuming the council approved it, they would say the same thing. We will rezone this and it will take effect after the contract is entered to only do 6 units. So absolutely that can be limited to 6. But that's how we would do it.
Appreciate that clarification. And then because it has been brought up, I know at other meetings, not specifically about this topic, but I think it still applies. We do talk a lot about road funds being withheld, right? When we talk about multi-family developments with more high density housing.
So that particular penalty the legislature did enact, the cities had to make certain requirements. They had to turn in to the Department of Workforce Services a affordable housing plan. And as Jeff mentioned, they had what I call a shopping list of 25 different strategies. I think it was 24, 25. Anyway, 24, 25, and we went through that for 3 or 4 weeks. We went through creating that plan and making sure that penalty didn't come on Fruit Heights because we got our plan in. And we chose the only 5 that were available to us. We had to choose 5. Did we choose 6? Anyway, they were only, the only ones possible were the ones that we chose. And why did we choose, there's been discussion about the golf course tonight, because that's the last major parcel of the city that isn't developed. So we chose that, and is the general plan meant to be unchanged or unchangeable? No. In fact, the city adopts regularly a new general plan every 10 years or so. And it takes into account things that have changed. But can I tell you with certainty that the state has withheld? So I mentioned earlier that I represent other cities. We made sure that our cities that we represent knew what the penalties were, enacted those provisions that were required so they didn't get penalized. So can I tell you of any of the cities I represent, none of them got penalized because we made sure we did the work so we met their state required deadline. Do I know of any cities off the top of my head that? No, I don't, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are. My other hunch is probably the state probably delayed their enforcement of that because a lot of the cities that, and some of those deadlines haven't happened. So some of the deadlines for smaller cities and rural towns haven't happened.
Appreciate that. Sorry, sorry. I think it's just where I'm old. Can you hear me now? Okay. So my thought on this, when I look at the zoning map, everything from the Rock Loft north is A1 or RS12 with exception to the corner lots. I think, I believe it was Miss Stapp, and I apologize if that's the incorrect pronunciation. I liked her comment about potentially rezoning a neighborhood, right? If we need some high density or medium density or whatever definition we put on it, housing, I see value in potentially doing it as a group or an area. If potentially there's the opportunity for the homeowners to be compensated fairly for that because of the benefit that potential developers would see there. If I would be concerned, I have a neighbor that has they're over an acre, right? Very easily, based on the R3 designation, they could put a whole lot of units on that property if they came in and requested a rezone. Not that it necessarily sets precedent, but I believe it's harder to say no in the future. If there's an opportunity for us as a city to look at a area or a neighborhood to rezone in order to meet the state's requirements, that's something that I think would add value to our city. If we feel that we have to, if the state's mandating that we have some sort of higher density housing, but individually choosing lots. I'm not saying it'd be easy, but I think individually choosing lots to rezone, I think is really difficult. And I don't know that it's the right thing to do for our neighbors. My thoughts.
So I have a lot of questions on this. And Brad, when you addressed us last fall, I think it was August or September, I remember I went back and looked at what you said, and you said it was our job to make sure it complies with city codes and ordinances. So the last week I've gone through all of our ordinances and I've looked at the state codes that have changed. And I have some questions on this. I know everyone says this meets all of our codes, but I do have questions on that. Obviously, it's not marked in the general plan. This area was not marked as mixed residential. It wasn't marked as transitional. And the one thing that the general plan talks about, it talks about in this transitional zone between a high density and then you step down to something. So as I look at this, we need to address, and we've got something else to talk about. We may address that for other places and maybe even this a little bit. But to go from our least dense to our most dense, and then we would have the next lot up, and someday it will be built what would happen to that if it's an RS-12? Could have animals right next to this. Anyway, it would be nice to be able to have some kind of step. So a couple questions. We have an ordinance for condominiums in Fruit Heights, and it requires it to be an acre. How do we address that with this property?
So that's a good question. Darren, remind me, do we have a PUD ordinance? Yeah, so that's how you address it. PUD ordinance allows for flexibility.
These are not condominiums either.
How are they not?
They're townhomes. Condominiums is a special planning process where it's different than townhomes. These could be individually sold. Condominiums is part of a project that you only own the airspace inside the unit. The shells are owned by the HOA. It's a completely different process. What he's proposing is not condominiums. That's a totally different subdivision process to approve condominiums.
And Brad, you should weigh in here, because I went back and read the Utah Condominium Act, and it looks like that definition applies.
So I'd have to look at it in conjunction with the PUD ordinance, but typically if you have a restriction on the condominium project, this could still be possible under a PUD ordinance.
Okay. The top of the second page of our PUD ordinance, it says a PUD has to be 2 acres.
And I don't think this is a PUD either. I mean, PUD requires 40% open space. This is an R3 zone that has a maximum density, and if he meets the intent, if it's a zone that he meets the intent of it, it's not a PUD or a condominium, it's an R3 zone. I mean, I don't think, I'd have to go back and look. I'm not even sure that there's any common area required at an R3. Did you see that part when you were reading it?
No, I'm not. When I'm reading R3, I don't see how you can do this on an R3. But I don't understand exactly how it fits. But I do understand it talks about the density in R3. There's 2 things in the R3 that refers back to the general plan. And terms have changed in the general plan, but in the section 8E-1 of the R3, it says areas to be considered for this type of zoning are depicted on the higher density map for the general plan. And this area is not depicted on the general plan. I think we do have a problem. We don't have, and people have brought this up, I didn't know everybody realized this, but we don't have a zone that's more transitional from the higher density to the lower density. And then in the next page in that, it talks about density. And there's a table in there, in the R3, it states that the density for the R3 is 8,000 square feet. And then it has two area 1 and area 2, which in the old general plan, that was our highest density and our less density. And so, since this is not marked on the general plan as the highest density or the next highest density, I guess I would interpret that it's an 8,000 foot lot.
So with a general plan is a plan that the city does. It is guidelines, and so typically what happens if there's a zone that's changed, a zone change that's made outside of the general plan, at some point, sometimes some cities do it in conjunction, but the general plan should be amended to comport with the zone change. But it's not, I mean, it's good practice, but the general plan is not a controlling document for the city council. The city council can rezone regardless of what the general plan says.
Okay, so we do have to change the general plan if we do this.
Good practice would say that yes, but it doesn't have to be done beforehand. It can be done after the fact.
Okay.
Are you going? No, I have lots of thoughts. I totally understand the rights of a landowner. I've done development for years. I've gone to plenty of rezoning meetings myself and stood before crowds, so I completely understand. I guess I have like mixed feelings back and forth because I can see both sides of this. I just understand both sides very clearly. My issue, which I think is gonna bring up, I feel like there's a gap in our city zoning. We're missing a whole area. It stresses me out to rezone something to R3. I know we can say you have to keep the 6 lots, but I don't wanna have these same public hearings over and over again. Because even though we are almost filled out, there are a lot of large lots that are acres that it's infill. That is what happened. I live back east, that's all I did was infill projects. It's what happens to cities. I get it doesn't have to be on the general plan. I love the idea of pinpointing transitional areas, of saying this is a transitional area, this is a transitional area, and creating a new zone for kind of townhomes, condominiums, so it fits in there, because it is a little, like R3 is kind of a scary ordinance. I choose to live in Route Heights because I don't want that, but I get people have the right to develop their property at the same time. I just feel like we're missing, there's like a gap that we're missing, which is this transitional zone, a zoning ordinance that, allows for townhomes and maybe kind of pinpoint specific areas where we feel like this would work in the city, and maybe it is this law in the long run. I just don't know if R3 is the zone it should be. I think the zone should be, if it got rezoned, it doesn't currently exist. I think it is a little scary. And I don't love the idea of having to have these meetings over and over again for decades. I don't love that. I don't think a developer loves it. I think if they say this is a transitional zone, it makes it easier for people to come in and say, okay, then I'm gonna take it to this, because I don't know. Those are my thoughts on it. I feel like we're missing a piece, and yes, it, I guess, could be rezoned to that. But I don't think R3 is the zone that I feel like super comfortable with. I just don't want to open that can. I don't want emails for my remaining time. The planning commission, and I think it stresses people out. It would stress me out. You're just always wondering who's gonna buy what and then develop it. But again, I understand, like, homes in Fruit Heights are very expensive. I don't even know if this falls under the affordable housing, if they're 700,000, that's not super affordable.
I think it's at 5 to 650.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Anyways, those are
right.
kind of all over the place. I don't know if that helps anyone, but that's what's in my head.
I mean, just a couple quick thoughts. One is our recommendation, at least one possible recommendation is rezone, but first the development agreement. The development agreement needs to be signed by the developer, it's an agreement between the city and the developer, limiting what he's going to be able to do. So again, I do get the concern about maybe there's another zone between R3 and what we have now. I don't think that has to prevent us from making a decision today, because we have tools available to us, including this development agreement option. Another thing to keep in mind under, Chapter 10, AB1, it does say the areas to be considered for this type of zoning are depicted on the high density map of the general plan. However, the next sentence also says this zone designation can also be used in conjunction with a PRUD. PRUD is the purpose of the planned residential unit development overlay designation is to encourage imaginative and efficient utilization of land by providing greater flexibility in the location of buildings on the land, the consolidation of open spaces, and the clustering of dwelling units. So we already have tools in our possession as a city, but to prevent, again, some of the dangers. And again, as an attorney, we talk about the slippery slope all the time, and that's everyone's concern here. Well, what if he changes his mind and suddenly we have, I don't know, some huge multi-family with hundreds of units? That's not gonna happen, because we have tools in our possession. It's available to us. We've gone through them. I don't think the choice is reject it because we have to find a zone that's perfectly fitting this situation, because we have a zone that can work. We have the tool of the development agreement. We have the code regarding PRUDs. I think there's a way for us to navigate this safely, to prevent against those slippery slope arguments, and ensure that we can provide opportunities for young families to afford homes in this wonderful city.
Well, but the PRUD does say, and we have to change that or have a variance to that, because it's two acres. The top of
He
the
couldn't do a
page.
PRUD. He couldn't do a PRUD, it needs 2 acres. But the other two R3 projects that we have in the city, they're not PRUDs and they're not condominiums. So it's possible to do this, just as a standalone R3, we've done it.
But I guess it feels like we're just kicking the can down the road, and why not solve it? That's not saying he may not in the end be able to do this, he can. I just think it's gonna keep coming up, so why not find a zone that fits this? Because R3 feels really, I don't know, scary. Like that R3 for the most part is not what people move to Fruit Heights for. But there is room for townhomes, and there's room for really, we need more diversity in housing. I don't know how you say it. Like, we need that. And there's some cities that don't have this, and homes get run down, and it looks like really bad. So I don't want that either. I don't agree with everything Farmington City does on some of their main streets where you can't develop. So developer can't win, then the homes are just run down, and it looks kind of like a junkyard in some areas, which you do not want either. But I, again, feel like there's something missing here that, yes, you can make it fit, but then we're gonna make the next one fit and the next one. So why not just figure out a zone that's gonna work for him and other people, and help people feel comfortable, and try to meet this mandate that the state has. Is that possible, or am I just?
No, it's not, it's not impossible.
You still have to, the city still has to act on the application before.
Yes.
Right? You can't
Totally,
say,
yes, I just.
come back again in 6 months from now, we created this new zone.
Yes.
And you've got, so one of the concerns you talked about is having this come back for decades. So a developer can't submit the same application, it has to wait a year at least before submitting the same application.
The different laws, not the same place.
Right, but I'm saying, so if there is a desire, the planning commission. can
Even
say
if
staff-
a different zone, because he would be
Yeah,
applying
and say
for a
staff.
different zoning, it wouldn't be R3.
For this particular location, the decision needs to be made, right?
Yeah.
But if staff says, gosh, or planning commission says, staff, we need a new zone that is a transition, but it's not R18, but not R3. Come up with a recommended zone and have it brought back to review, any guys review. That certainly is the planning commission's purview to direct staff to.
We do, but not necessarily for this application. I mean, that can happen later. That's to be totally.
Right.
Totally separate.
Regardless.
Yeah. And that would solve that issue going forward, and provide another option for developers.
Yeah, Clark makes a great point, but I think the R3 is for this project. I think it makes sense. It's not really affordable, but at least it shows the state that we're doing something. I realize there's a whole bunch of residents from Oakmont and Quail Ridge. But the planning commission doesn't represent Oakmont and Quail Ridge only. It's what would someone on Country Lane think? I think they think that's fine. It probably makes a lot of sense. I noticed there was no one from Mystic Heights on this petition. There's 8 units in Mystic Heights, and there's 6 units adjacent. I think maybe 4 units on the adjacent lot would be fine. I didn't like the comment that the Van Gennels were sold that they were going to get single family lots on all those lots. I didn't like that at all. But I mean, Chris has rights as well. Chris is a resident, and the Van Drumlins encroached on his rights and his view when they built their house. So, I mean, everyone has property rights, but that's a thoroughfare, and that is going through. And when you make zoning decisions, you think, what's the commercial center, what's thoroughfare, and is it adjacent to other high density? And I think this fits the bill for that. So I'm in favor of it. I like it. And I'm prepared to make a motion.
Unless any of the planning commission members have any other questions, any other comments, I'm willing to entertain any motions.
I'm still uncomfortable with the R3 on this. And I think the blame is on the city for not having something better in place right now. I mean, we're going from the lowest to the highest density, and it just does not feel right.
I wonder, and I've been on the planning commission for a month, why when the general plan was done, we knew we needed this, we knew we needed transitional zones. I guess I'm like, why wasn't it addressed at all?
The general plan doesn't have any proposed zoning anywhere. It's, I think from that standpoint.
It's very general.
It's very general.
Very general.
It's good and bad.
It's an apt description.
It doesn't say, oh, Mountain Road is a thoroughfare, so there could be higher density on Mountain Road. It doesn't say, Main Street is higher density.
But, I mean, you have to agree, like, when I buy a lot, when I look somewhere, I look everywhere around and make sure I know what I'm getting into. So a general plan for most people should depict what the future of the city, what they want to look like. So you're like, maybe that's not my house if this is right in that area. So that, I mean, that is kind of this, it should show that, because people, when they're investing in a property, want to know what's going on around them. And so a general plan, I feel, should depict that, not just in general, or it's just a waste of people's money.
If it was in general, though, it wouldn't be a general plan.
But you can say transitional area, like they've got stars for things and all sorts of, it can be a area.
Because this general plan doesn't tell me where anything that's gonna be high density is. It tells me what might happen to the golf course one day.
Where the trails are gonna be.
I think that's, it was a waste of a good grant. Someone wrote a good grant, but it was a waste. So that's my opinion.
I mean, it's difficult, right? Because I get the concerns of people move in, they have expectations, they want to live in single family, this, that, or the other. My home was built in 1983. The people who moved in some neighborhood that's somewhat close to it in the 1970s, did they ever anticipate that would happen? I mean, if we're going back to 1950, did anyone expect that any of these homes would be here the way they are?
I'm not anti-development and subdividing, that is what's going to happen. I just don't like that we have a gap in our zones.
No, I fully agree with you.
There's a large gap that feels a little uncomfortable.
Right.
It feels like a large jump instead of like a moderate jump. And again, I don't think 6 townhomes there are crazy. I think they would look better than what currently exists there.
They did everything they were asked to do.
But I think people want to know what's going on around them.
Right.
It feels uncomfortable and it feels like.
Yeah, no, I think those are fair statements. I think when you consider R3 naked alone without anything else, it can be intimidating. But again, the city does have a right to require a development agreement to move forward with that would bind to this sort of plan so that you don't have that slippery slope of
Jim, let me just make one comment, just thinking about the math.
Yeah, please.
I mean, I like this idea of transitional zone. In my mind, a transitional zone, I mean, we have an R18. So a transitional zone between R3 and R18 is at R6, 6,000 square foot lot.
This one that he did up kind of said that, and it's, like a townhome, so it's not separated single family.
So
Art has a pretty interesting proposal.
He spent like a whole week writing a new code.
Well, let's just say that R6 is a transitional zone. On this piece of property, if it was zoned R6, 6,000 square foot lots, he could put 6 units on that property.
Yes,
So that's essentially where he's at.
but it's just, I guess my issue is like, I don't wanna keep making conditional, I just think I would just prefer like, make it, so you're saying even if we made a different zone, he still had to make a different, even though he's applying to rezone, because it's the piece of property, not the type of. Is that what you're telling me?
I think you have to make a decision whether this is the right place for it, and say, we're moving on, we're not doing it here. I mean, I get the idea that finding a piece of property that you can master plan. The problem is there's only 50 acres in the whole city left to develop. And $600,000 homes, townhomes even, are not going to accommodate affordable housing. But what they are going to accommodate is probably what Chris Christensen is saying, is that they're going to be younger families. Because I'm telling you that on a quarter-acre lot in this city, you're north of $1.5 million for a house. Those houses up on that hill are over $2 million. And so you're not going to get young families at that price point anymore in the city. It's just the fact of where we're at. Now, we may not have enough property to develop that any of this even matters. And no one, I think it's important for the planning commission, the city council, and the public to know that no one is in favor of the state shoving their will down the throats of municipalities all over the Wasatch Front. But there needs to be some kind of accommodation for cities that are nearly built out, can't really do anything. We did a quick little numbers thing, and according to the state guidelines, an affordable housing unit in Fruit Heights needs to be $400,000. There's no law in this city that sells for $400,000. And so what are we supposed to do? So I mean, we can come up with a transitional zone. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change anything at the end of the day. That's what he's proposing, is a transitional.
And with the development agreement, we stick him to that.
My concern, so I don't have an issue with medium pregnancy. I believe it's brings value, social value to the city and the neighborhood. My concern is the unknown for the neighbors. What's to say that if somebody has a home on an acre in a RS12 zone, that they don't come and say, next month, and say, I want to rezone my property, I'm gonna tear down my home, and I'm gonna build a bunch of.
That's a totally reasonable approach. And I think everybody gets that, is that you do have some rights as far as existing property owners. I think we all totally understand that.
So my biggest concern is just the unknown that we, by approving this, and I think that Mr. Christensen will do a great job. I think that it makes sense to put this development potentially in that neighborhood based on all the open land. This might be a great location to be classified as transition, potentially. But it's the unknown for residents. What's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen to the rest of the lots? I've lived in a neighborhood that, the city decided to put in an activity center that was open to the public and was not on any map prior. And we ended up moving it to that result, because we didn't want, because of, and it's not what we expected to go in that neighborhood. But I think just having that unknown for the neighbors that's my biggest concern. I think if we tell them this is the plan, whether we agree or not with the general plan, and I agree it holds value, the general plan, the way that I understand it, is that's what the city, the planning commission, the city council a year ago said, this is our plan for the city. And you can argue both sides, that it says that we need to put in medium to high density, but you can also say it's not on the map. So I can see both sides of the argument. My biggest concern is just that we come up with a plan and we stick to the plan so that people can plan their lives. That's my biggest concern.
So I think my biggest concern is as a planning commission, this vote, if we approve this, we're done. With the new state laws, that's all the input we can have. And
The council didn't adopt that. That's false.
Is that right?
The council didn't adopt that. It was prepared and in compliance with state law required, and the council did not.
Oh,
So we're a little hanging out there on that.
okay.
So meaning we're not in compliance with state code. The deadline's gonna pass. There was no penalty with that,
Okay, I was not aware of that.
but yeah, that came up in February.
But that's the direction the state is going.
The state went, the state's there.
The state went to where we set the zone and then everything else. is up
Well,
our-
so to clarify, had the council adopted that, and we're in violation of state code right now, but had the council adopted that, then the subdivision process would be staff done and not come back before the city council. So, but that's what the city council, the state wants city councils out of subdivision processes. That is clear. So you can have one public hearing under the state code, you can have a planning commission, but the council will be out of that. And that was what the council did not like.
I mean, I guess for me, that's even more reason to have this other zone in, because, I mean, there is just a gap in our zones and fill it, because now, I mean, really, we don't have much of a say. If it meets it, I just.
Well, so but you have to say, because there's nothing that requires the planning commission to approve a zone change or that requires council to approve a zone change. It's a purely legislative decision, and a legislative act. So as long as you've got some reason, and it's not just, well, I don't like the color of the shirt that someone's wearing, right? It's arbitrary, but as long as you've got some reason that it's rational, you don't have to do a zone change.
I think my concern about those, it becomes we're not saying, there's no standard. That we're not.
I don't know that I can agree with that, and that's okay, because your 650 North is not a really tiny residential road, right? It's not, and it's planned to go through, you've got high density right next to it. So, you know, this is kind of an area where it could make sense if, so you could lean to the right here on this map and say, well, we want to keep the same as the zoning on the right, or you go, well, that's fine, if it's zoning on the left. But if you say an RS12 right in the middle of the neighborhood, it's got 45 lots or RS12, I think that's an inappropriate place to put the rezone and put the townhome product. Right, it just, that one doesn't make sense, but, you know, that's up to you guys.
So, I'm willing to entertain any motions anyone would like to present.
I think it's on the way to the gun club, it's on the way to East Wilderness, and it's on the way to the animal shelter. It's for commercial. I make a motion to approve the R3 zoning rechange with the condition of the.
Sorry, I think.
Your microphone a little closer.
I make the motion to approve the R3 zoning rechange with the condition of the development agreement for 6 units.
Am I able to second, or is that not something I second the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so 3-2, so that motion has failed. I'll entertain another motion.
My gut is, I just can't. And again, I'm a pro-development person. I just don't feel comfortable with the gap in our code. The city council, in speaking with him, he feels the same way, and the city council's gonna go that way. So just fix the problem and then move, figure it out. Just let's fix it. I hate the idea of abandoning things. I think let's do the work, let's get it right, let's fix it. And so developers don't have issues. We have a clear plan, neighbors understand. That's just my bet. So.
I would just clarify, I didn't hear you. I think speaking for himself.
Oh, he was speaking for himself.
Yeah.
But he is on the city council. but he was speaking for himself. And his thought was, we are missing a piece that needs to be fixed. So
So do I have to have a motion? Who would like to?
So you can, your options at this point are, you can't have the same option again, right?
Right.
But you
It's a new.
you could, so you have to do something, give it a negative recommendation, but it needs to move on to city council.
Right, so if you guys can present
Yeah,
that.
so I would make a motion to suggest to city council.
So you make a motion to move it on to city council with a negative recommendation.
That, I would make a recommendation to move it to city council with a negative recommendation to rezone this property.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Alrighty, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. So 3-2, that motion passes. Okay, so I think that finishes.
Sorry, one other thing, can we discuss, and can we, if we feel appropriate, that we do look into whether it's a transitional zone or what Clark has put together, but something other than R3, that would allow, whether it's a.
yeah, if there was a different zone that,
Would that look any different?
it'd be R6,
I know.
so 6,000 square feet.
Say it was an R6, would that?
So I think what we can do is maybe, and I know Clark worked really hard on this RT6. Is that something that we can send to staff? You guys can take a look and bat around some ideas for future discussion.
And this may not be the answer for this, but we don't have, the way I read it, I don't see unless we go to an R3, if somebody wants to put in a twin home that's an area that's appropriate, we don't seem to have something that fits up with that. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I think that's, so Clark, maybe key plan on send it to Darren and Jeff and to Brad.
We can do that.
And then, maybe in the near term, we can have that be part of our discussion.
I would love to see 2%, and to Brian's point, I understand it's probably extremely difficult or near impossible. But I'd love to see us just designate an area in the city. If we're saying that we need medium density, is there anywhere we can designate just so that people can find? I don't like the idea of this coming constantly, right? Before this, and being a meeting like this, right? This is a lot of work. It's a lot of potential anxiety for neighbors, and I just don't think if we can do anything to help the city residents to know what the plan is, I think it's our responsibility to share with them what the plan is, rather than picking and choosing. I don't think that's fair.
Thank you. I think that closes out our discussion of the rezone. I'd be willing to entertain a motion. I love all of you, but I am ready to go to bed. So can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Any second? I'll second it. We all second it. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your participation today. Thank you so much.